I want to start off by saying thank you to one of our listeners, the Richard Cheney, put a comment in saying, in the TV show, and I assume in the book, Paul Drake was Perry's detective. So that was something I looked into, didn't know. So yes, Drake, Officer Drake in this show, I guess if we're looking at this as a prequel, eventually will be working with Perry Mason and be part of his crew. He's
Yeah, like
actually,
his inside man.
yeah, he's like a main character in the original series. I remember the character. I remember seeing him, but I didn't know his name or anything. so, um, but yeah, thank you, the Richard Cheney. Anybody who has comments, things we don't know, or we missed something, or there's anything that you've caught that we did not. Put them in the comments. We definitely read those, and yeah, that's what this whole YouTube thing's about. Everybody, a community.
I
So,
even
so
corrected myself in the
I
comments.
saw that. I saw that for the I almost said Hannibal, for the Hamilton review.
Well,
Yeah,
I wasn't wrong, but I was like half wrong. So I wanted to clarify because after listening to it, because I listen to our stuff after I'm done, we're done too. Because
I
give
don't.
myself I do all the time because I try to say like less or
I say
something like
a
the
lot. I do know that.
yeah. So I try to listen to it to critique myself. And as I was listening to it, I was like, no, that's Andrew Lloyd Webber. He did Phantom. He did Les Mis. So I was like, ah, shit.
Little insider info. I occasionally edit out some of my ums if I notice, because when I'm editing, I will listen to little pieces, and if I notice an excessive amount, I will trim them down. So
Fucking cheater.
yeah, it is. I've even there's sometimes when we start, we'll pause a little more than I like, and I'll trim down that. So it's all a lie, everyone. Some of our conversations are edited. That is true. But
Quick.
moving, go
I was going to say, quit filtering me, Brian.
ahead. I've
Quit
never
censoring
cut.
me.
The only things I've cut were if the audio was messed up. That which unfortunately happens. I have cut some stuff. And then there was something I cut a while back. I can't remember why. There was something. I think it cut out at one point and it didn't make sense. So I ended up looking for a good place to cut it, and I had to cut like a huge chunk out because none of it made sense. What we were talking about, but yeah, there you go. If it happens about 30 minutes into any of these, then I probably don't fix it because it's rare that I'll listen past that. And according to the analytics, it's rare that anybody listens past that. So, uh, but yeah, Perry Mason, Chapter 3. Before we jump into any more or breaking down, things in this episode, I wanted to. You had texted me. You had a theory, and I know that a theory has evolved after this episode.
Yes.
So to screw it, let's talk about that.
Um. See, there you're gonna edit out my
I, I
They. I think that, and we had talked about it after the last episode about how I think the studios are highly involved in this, and the only reason I think that more and more is because one, it's Hollywood. That happens in L.A. I've read a lot of different books. There's, the Black Dahlia murder. Like, there's so many things that are, linked back to, studios, but a lot of it can't be proven because they had everybody on their payroll. And, there's no DNA in 1900. So, 1905, there was no DNA. But uh, they have, there was a line in this. Well, what I was going to say was is they wouldn't have showed the studio execs in the first episode if they didn't matter, and that's one of the reasons I
good point.
think that yeah. But there was something that when Alice and Mother were talking that really kind of hit home for me. They kept saying that she was going off script. I don't know that Alice is in on it. Like I said previously, I think she's like schizophrenic or something. I think she's, she's got some pretty bad health issues, and I think her mom is taking advantage of that. But when they were talking about coming from Canada, and she was trying to basically, she was talking to Emily Dodson, and she was telling her, it's okay. Sometimes you do things, sometimes you get lonely. And then she was talking about her mom. She was like, I know you came here when you were a kid and whatever. And she's like, but you had your mother in the Lord. And she said, yeah, I did have her. I always had her, but it was lonely. So I'm thinking in Hollywood, there's a lot of, even now, we look at Epstein and all this stuff about the human trafficking and those kind of things. That's what I'm starting to think this is that um, it's got to do with the church helping the studios. And what strengthened that also was the fact that Ennis went to, he went over to that brothel or whatever, and he was trying to get money from them. So, like, all those things happening in this episode, like, I guess compounded my already theory, but it kind of strengthened some of the things I was already thinking.
Yeah, definitely. When you said the studios involved, you're right. Why would you introduce that element at the beginning? Power, their influence, what they can do, the fact that they sort of run the city in some ways, and then on top of that, um, when you started to bring it up, human trafficking, different elements like that. I was also looking at the fact that he was looking at those pictures when he was in the church and out like orphanage stuff, and thinking about what other operations are going on here. So I could see that something's going on with that church, and I definitely could see the studio being involved.
And like we said, they're basically in the very first episode flexing their muscle and just showing that they're in charge. Even though Perry is a private eye, he's not a cop. There's probably a lot of people on. There's probably a lot of cops on their payroll, but the fact that him being tied with like um, EB, who we can get into that here shortly too. I thought that was a very interesting storyline this episode too. But him knowing people, him being in league with not only detectives, he's also in league with attorneys and everything else. So for these studio execs to just basically whoop the shit out of him and torture him shows me that they're the ones really running the show, and they haven't really came back up since that point.
I enjoyed the opening of the episode, how it was sort of a performance by. There's a lot of performances in this. So the beginning of the episode, you had a performance from the DA and from the John Lithgow.
EB.
Yeah, and that was for the press, and just every aspect of it, from posing at points to get the right picture to saying the right thing, and putting on a show, saying a joke here and there. Then you have the elements of Alice performing for the church, for the congregate. A lot of show, I'm thinking that was symbolic for some reason. It's in Hollywood, so that was something that stuck out to me.
Well, when I was talking about EB, there was that point where he was forgetting stuff, and then throughout the episode, he seemed to be kind of losing his place and kind of dozing off. I don't know if that's a sign of like early onset, or if it's dementia, or if he's just that stressed out, or what. I think that was they basically were like pointing it out a couple different times and drawing attention to it. So I
Yes.
don't know if that's going to play in later or not.
Yeah, I think it will. He clearly has some kind of health thing going on. There was an allusion to him being wrapped up in something odd, fishy, with that when he was talking with that other lawyer guy. There's more going on with him than we know, clearly. Yet he seems to legit be trying to help Emily. Like he seems to be a good guy, but there's something in his past he doesn't want out. And
Well,
then,
as an attorney, can you imagine if your attorney was just forgetting everything?
yeah,
Like,
shit, yeah. I'm pretty
that
sure if I
would
had
not be
to
good.
if I had to guess, that's going to tie into Perry Mason running the case more as a lawyer. You know, I'm thinking because I'm thinking this is just me speculating. I don't know this, but I'm thinking EB is not going to be able to perform at some point, and Perry Mason's going to have to take over.
Well, when what's her name, Della,
Yes.
came to Emily's aid, regardless of whether or not they have the funding from Mr. Baggerty or whatever his name was, I think that she's going to have them represent her, uh, regardless of whether they pay her or not. They might do like a pro bono thing or something for her.
I don't know that, and I'm serious. I don't know that like she'll work with it, but I don't know if a woman could practice law
No, I'm just saying that.
in the 1930s.
No, I'm saying because Della went there and literally saved her from signing a confession and getting her ass beat by the detectives, that she's going to want Della and them to represent her.
Oh yeah.
So because Della's with Evie and Perry and them, Haggerty basically pulled the rug out from under him and was like, yeah, we're not giving you any more money. So I think that the church is no longer giving him money, but I think that they're still going to do it pro bono, and they're still going to figure out how to try and prove her innocence.
Let's see here.
I got a couple things.
No, I'm just looking on the history of women in law, but yeah, there were some, but it was. Let's see here. Women law. Technically, the legal profession was not formally established until 79 and 80, but women have never been excluded from law schools, legal practice, or judgeship throughout the history of the PRC. In fact, there were women law graduates and lawyers even prior to the founding of the PRC in 1949.
Well, should I imagine? God damn, that was a long time ago.
So
That's
the other,
pretty late. I mean, there were juries and judges and lawyers and stuff way before 1949.
in the U.S., the first female lawyer in the U.S. was in 1869. There you go.
She represented John Wilkes Booth.
So there you go. Um,
That'd be a high-profile case. Shit, I'd want that case. Right or wrong, everybody would know.
That's the craziest thing about lawyers is, yeah, certain cases it's like clearly the person's guilty, but you know, still got to get representation.
Yep.
Let's see here. So we have, you know, I mentioned Drake earlier. Drake gets confronted by one of the bad cops, one of the guys involved in this whole thing. You know, he threatens his family in a roundabout way, offers him sort of a bribe. And Drake is stuck in this moral dilemma because he knows what's happening is wrong, but he, you know, he fears for his wife, his unborn child, and yet, you know, he's conflicted. You can see that conflict, and you sort of completely understand, you know, why he initially turns against Perry Mason and even, you know, beats him up. It's like, you know, dude, go away.
Well, to me, it's not only a moral dilemma. If Perry just left him alone and didn't come after him anymore, it wouldn't have even been an issue. He would just, you know, go about his day and just be fine doing whatever it was he was doing. But I think Perry's that, you know, conscious sitting on his shoulder, just reminding him, hey, you know, this isn't right. So that constant reminder, I think, is what kind of weighed on him a little bit, and then made him he changed his own mind, but it kind of, that confliction made him want to help Perry as opposed to help the crooked detectives.
Yeah. Um, so you also had, like you said, Baggerly ended up basically saying to hell with Emily. Um, she's on her own. Forget her. And he basically has this weird plan, which I'm curious if this is going to tie into the overarching plot. He wants to build a city, a religious-based city. I'm assuming with the church that Alice is in, and he wants his son to help him, build this city. It was interesting because it made me think, okay, what exactly does this have to do with anything?
Immediately, what it reminded me of, me and my wife watched this show. It was something, I don't remember the name of it, but it was basically a murder show. It was like uh, Unusual Suspects or something like that, and that's a movie. This was a I don't remember. Anyway, it's one of the investigative discovery shows. But they were talking about this, church. It was basically they created this neighborhood where all these people lived, but they all worshiped this one guy because he was the reincarnation of God or whatever. But they got all these teenage girls to basically want to be his brides, his teenage brides or whatever. But they had their own community, and it was legitimately, I think they said like 40 houses and stuff. It's like all these people live there. So immediately when I'm thinking this church, the mother trying to keep, Alice under wraps, keep her in line, all the whispering, their separation from George Gannon being like, no, he's a good guy. We vetted him. We did all this stuff, which they show more and more that he probably wasn't the bad guy. However, the fact that a mega church needs an accountant and several accountants because they, are bringing in that much money, and Baggerly being a big part of the church, and to be able to afford a city,
Yeah.
like to finance a city, I don't. It just seems very wrong. It just like hit me. It made me feel icky.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I didn't like it because with all the stuff with, like you said, the orphanage pictures and her, Alice feeling really uncomfortable talking to Emily. Like it feels really wrong to me. And they could just be putting that in there to, kind of throw you off something, but that's what it felt like to me.
We get a little bit more from Perry Mason's pilot girlfriend.
I love
Uh,
Coupe.
yeah, she. It was interesting because her whole role in this episode was, yeah, she was. We got a cool little aerial scene of them flying, and her getting into the casino and him working the case, but then it basically took a moment to say, yeah, these two are legit into each other. And I like, at the fountain, he's just like, you could have just said you liked me, or, it's like, at first it was just hookups, but now they're like, no, I think we're sort of a thing now.
Well, yeah, it was almost like a relationship of convenience where, the airport or the landing strip's right by his house, his farm. And she probably saw him and was like, oh, he's pretty hot. So initially, it was every time she was in town, that was just her thing. But as she was around him more and saw how conflicted he was by all these cases, and trying to reconnect with this kid. I think that she likes him because if she didn't, we talked about that. I think at the end of episode 1 or 2, I don't remember, where she sat in the house and was trying
One.
to console. Was that the end of 1?
Yeah.
Yeah, when she was trying to console him after uh, the baby mama wouldn't let him talk to his kid. So I think that even from the jump, they're showing that they care about each other. Now I don't know if that's going to be important later, or they're just establishing a character arc.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure. Um, and there we go. Again. This too deep in the episode for me to cut that. I'm not gonna get that far in the edit. The Yeah, I was just looking. I couldn't remember the exact year. One of the reason I was questioning whether women could be lawyers at that point in history, they couldn't even vote until 1920. I was like, man, which is insane. You believe it wasn't until 1920? I was like, holy shit. Uh, and this episode touched on a little bit of that too. You know, there were some moments where they were showing how women were just were not being. This is after 1920. It's 1930, beginning at not far off. The beginning of the 1930s, but the fact that women are treated different. They're not treated as first class citizens. Treated like shit to some degree, and how just because she cheated on her husband, she's already convicted, and nobody wants to deal with her. Even other women, the woman who keeps yelling, she's guilty, she did it.
Well, yeah, because do I think what she did was super shitty? Yes. Do I think that she killed her kid because she did something shitty? That doesn't make her guilty of murder
Exactly.
because she slept with somebody. Like, yeah, it was shitty, but that doesn't mean that she sewed her kid's eyes open and was, in on this. Um, yeah, that's
And that's another running theme of this season has been what is morality and who determines what's moral and what's not. You go into the studio, at the beginning, this guy is morally corrupt, but this woman who we need is not. Remember the way the studio is playing in the beginning. So it
yes,
all comes down to you determine what is morality based on profit or what benefits you. And that's something that's for the general public right now, they need a villain, and she fits the bill. So you're guilty, even though she's not. Well, as far as we know. So
yeah.
that I find that interesting.
Well, just like we were talking about in the Hamilton review, it's you know, it's whoever writes your story is the one that essentially writes history. So you look at even this, or even old murder cases, or anything before the invention of DNA and everything else. Even though I still think that that can be fabricated and everything else, planting stuff. No, I don't think that's very commonplace. However, OJ was guilty as shit. Like, I don't think that Mark Furman was running around throwing bloody gloves in the back of his Bronco and shit. But I do think that back then, ah, drop my phone. Um, I
Sounds
think
pretty
that
good.
but I think that if the all the papers, they had so many news reporters there and everything. So me as a person, there wasn't TV back then. There was radio, but they weren't live broadcasting from a, you know, uh, from the courtroom. I don't know why the word courtroom escaped me, but so you're reading it in the paper the next day. So that's where you're getting your factual information from. So they're swaying you one way or the other. So it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. In the eye of public opinion, you're guilty.
Yeah. The So like I said, Drake finally does come to Perry and basically is like, look, this is what I know. Don't ever mention my name. I'll deny everything. And he gives him the false teeth. Um, and then we get a nice little sequence where Perry Mason and his friend are moving dead bodies around trying to.
That was fantastic.
Yeah. So they finally locate George's body, and yes, the teeth match. Perry Mason has now confirmed that it was not a suicide. There's definitely more going on. Who killed him? Why did the body get moved? What's going on? That's confirmed for him now, thanks to Drake.
Well, and we pieced that together at the end of the last episode. Although, I mean, they laid it out for you. We knew it was going to happen at this point, but I don't know. There's still a lot of missing pieces. The whys. We're starting to figure out who's doing what, and we're kind of finding the key players, but we still don't have the the why yet.
Yeah.
Although I think my why is correct, but it'll probably change after 2 episodes at least a little bit.
Uh, so Alice, we are told, does like 21 shows a day or some shit like that. Like,
No, I think it was a
what's
week. So
a
she's
week?
doing
Okay, yeah,
three productions a day.
there you go. It was something crazy. Yeah, she's working like crazy. She's being IV'd, which even Perry Mason was suspect about.
I
They
loved that whole scene.
Yeah, that was a
That was
great
great.
scene, and I love that he said something along the lines of "God left me in France" or something like that.
Yes.
So getting sort of his view on things. So yeah, she's getting this IV treatment. They're saying I guess it's vitamins or something. So clearly something's off. When I saw that, I was like, okay, something's going on with her that we're not being told yet. And then that leads to her performance at the end, where she clearly goes into what appears to be a seizure of some kind. And they play it off as sort of this religious thing. But then she wakes up with one hell of a statement, which I was like, what? Where's this going? Uh, we're going to resurrect Charlie, or I'm going to resurrect Charlie, the dead baby. I don't know where that's going.
Well,
And everyone else even seemed, like, what the hell?
I think it goes back to that's Mother. I think that Alice is like schizophrenic. I think she's fucking bonkers, and I think that they used her delusions and her ability to kind of wow a crowd to be the figurehead of this church. I obviously she's not running things because there's a whole table of people that are even a mega church. Jesus, there's there's like 14 people at this table, advising and everything else. It was a lot, but I think that I don't know if it's medical or mental. Like I don't know which part of the spectrum it is, but clearly she believes some of the crazy shit that she's saying. The very end when the boat's like kind of floating or whatever, it shows him or it shows her rather, like staring off. So I don't know if that was what she was seeing while she was having a seizure, or if that's what happened afterwards, like when she woke up. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I clearly that's gonna play in a big role in the I guess in the coming episodes, or at least in the next episode. The church, specifically her involvement in this case now, because now she's saying she has some kind of divine message from God that involves Charlie and being resurrected, and so that's going to be a whole thing in the plot. I don't know how that's going to play out, or what exactly it's going to do for the case, but definitely a part of the case. Emily had her court date where they set the bell at $25,000, which
Jesus, like
I
I've
can't
done like a
imagine.
lot of the inflation stuff. It's almost because we looked it up with the 100,000. 100,000 was worth like 2 million ish. So if 25,000, that it's like 500,000. So her bail was set at
Yeah,
equivalent today to like 500,000.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's crazy. She had the moment where she pled guilty, but then went back on it. And then, of course, we get the cops roughing her up, trying to get her to, sign a confession. Very just blatantly, being shitty and breaking the law. Uh, so yeah, I think you're right that they're going to take the case. Perry Mason, now that he knows what he knows, he's not going to drop this, even if he's not getting paid or however that works. I don't think he's going to care. Although Alice may pay him now. I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. You think the church will take
Uh,
it on?
I don't know because I think I think Mr. Baggerty, I don't know if he has money because of the church or if he's the one funding the church. Like, I don't know which direction that money's coming from or going. So I think it really depends on that. If clearly he's the one saying, yeah, we're not going to pay you anymore, I don't know if that means he represents himself or if he represents the church.
Yeah.
I don't. They haven't been clear enough yet, and I think that's intentional. But I don't think that we know exactly where. Well, we know all their money's coming. It's shit. Could you imagine if they did? If 300 people fit in that church, we'll say 300, which isn't a lot, but they're doing 3 shows a day, tithing 3 times a day. So if 300 people give $1, like I don't know how much they tithe back then. It was 50 cents or $1, but even that, I mean, shit, they're making $900 a day times 7. So that's what, $6,300 a week. That's a lot back
Yeah.
then. Shit.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
that's a lot now.
Yes.
I wouldn't mind
True.
making $6,300 a week.
Yeah.
I don't have a
Yes.
lot of overhead and people to pay, but shit.
The I'm curious to where we're not even at the halfway point of the season. We've got, a couple more episodes. So I keep trying to predict what's going to be the mid-season twist. Usually when you have a show like this, you're going to have that big twist in the mid point that, takes you to the end. I have no idea what it's going to be at this point. But I do stand by, I do think Perry Mason's going to shift into a lawyer role coming up.
I think he's gonna be the PI, lawyer, doctor, soldier, captain, man. Be the jack of all trades. Because I think I don't know, because EB, wasn't he in the show? Like wasn't there a lawyer in the show? Or was Perry Mason the lawyer?
Perry
Like I
Mason
said,
was the lawyer.
oh well, then yeah, that makes more sense. Like EB is basically losing his mind, going. And I don't mean that like he's going crazy. I think that he has early onset dementia. Like he is forgetting everything. He's just spacing out. So I think that eventually it's going to show him kind of, like you said, tailoring off as Perry takes over as the lawyer.
Yeah, because he's a defense lawyer, and Drake was his detective. Drake was the guy out in the streets and doing all the detective work, and he was also the one. He was sort of like a ladies' man, like he was in all the different while he's investigating, hooking up with the different clients and stuff like that was Drake actually.
Well, I think that they let his right hand man take that part over,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that was funny as shit when he was talking about, I was getting blowjobs. He was like, I don't think your wife would appreciate that too much.
yeah. That was funny.
He was like, don't put a damper on my day or something like that.
But yeah, that
And then
was
he used that information to blackmail him. He's like, well, maybe your wife wants to know. He's like, shut up.
almost every
His dead body.
scene, all their scenes together. It's typically there's food involved. I noticed. Yeah, they're always eating or drinking, or there's always some kind of beverage or drink or food. The burgers, the dogs, the steak, the diner in the first episode. You know,
Well, I think part of that plays too when you go back, when Perry kept being like, well, this is going to be part of our expenditures. We're going to, write this up as an expenditure. I think the other guy he just tries to, well, you look at the doctor's office now, everything. They're like, well, we gave you a Band-Aid. That was $14. They're, so, and even lawyers now, if you, ask one to do something, there's like, all right, well, it's $100 a billable hour. And you're like, holy shit, what? And they're like, well, it took me 7 billable hours to contact your doctor to find out that you were at the hospital on the 37th. It's like, sir, there was no 37th. Yeah. But I think that that's what that guy's doing. His friend is just billing them for everything. So he feels like it's free money. So he's just taking advantage of it.
yeah. So yeah, that was basically Perry Mason. Do you have any other thoughts?
No, the thing I was going to cover was what you brought up, the town. That
Okay.
yeah, but that was the only thing I was thinking of.
Yeah, it was just an odd scene that came out of nowhere, and it's like, well, this is clearly important. So I'm curious to where this is going. But yeah. So yeah, that was Perry Mason. Episode or chapter 3. We'll be doing chapter 4 next Sunday. Like I said, check out our Hamilton review. It's already up. We have an Independence Day ID4 review up that went up over Saturday. We'll be doing another movie review this coming Friday, and yeah, look for that. So we're
The
done.
more stuff, the merrier.
There you go. So bye.
Bye.
Never gets old.
No, I still think it's funny.
Bye.